thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to teach you 3 ways of playing a blues bass line over a 12-bar blues in A. So those 3 blues bass lines, they all have very similar musical elements. I'm going to explain them very quickly and very plainly, so not only you just play it, but you can also understand it and hopefully use it in the future. So let's start with the most basic and most important musical elements that we're using here. The blues is played in something called a shuffle. Shuffle is a feel. Shuffle is a subdivision that essentially is not 2 or 4 like we're usually used to in pop and rock. It is a subdivision that is based on 3. Meaning, if our beat is 1, 2, 3, 4, each one of those beats are going to be separated to 3 equal parts. We count it like this: 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. Now, why is this important? Because our eighth notes are not just eighth notes. They're swing eighth notes, which means they're based on a subdivision of 3. Now, we can't subdivide our quarter note to 2 when we're playing over a subdivision of 3, right? So these eighth notes are not regular eighth notes. They're eighth notes that are sitting on this 3 subdivision. Now, what this makes it to be is that the first eighth note is going to be heavier. It's going to be 2/3 of the quarter note, and the last eighth note is going to be just 1/3 of that quarter note. What do I mean? So if our subdivision is 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4, each first eighth note is going to be 1 and the second eighth note is going to be the a. So 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Playing it on bass is going to sound like this: 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Okay? All the eighth notes that you see in these bass lines are shuffle, blues, swing eighth notes, okay? Meaning they're all going to be heavier on the front and lighter just a third on the back. Keep that in mind for all the swing eighth notes that you see in this blues bass line. Okay, so now that we explained swing eighth notes and how to play them, let's go and talk a little bit about the first beginner bass line. Most of what you see there is just the root notes played in the shuffle swing eighth notes, okay? If you hadn't played those before and you're not used to them, definitely start with this beginner bass line. Now, one more musical element that we're using here that we are going to use for the rest of the bass lines as well is chromatic approaches. Meaning, I'm going to stick mostly to the root note, playing those swing eighth notes, but every time, or sometimes, just to kind of shake things up, when I want to go to a different root note, what I'm going to do is use an approach, a melodic approach that is chromatic. Meaning, if I'm going to go to D, my chromatic approach will be C, C sharp to D. If I'm going to A, my chromatic approach is going to be G, G sharp, A. Okay? So in our beginner bass lines, you'll see it when we approach A. You'll see it when we approach D. Actually, within D, we do it in the middle of those D7 bars, and we're also going to approach it coming to the E. Then going back to the D, then going back to the A, and to the E. That kind of explained it all. So now that we have all of those together, we understand the musical elements, let's play together the first beginner bass line. so moving on to the intermediate bass line, we're using still the swing eighth notes and we're using still the chromatic approaches, but we're adding a really cool element. So up until now, we've just used our root note. What we're going to start using now is the dominant 7 chord. Every time that you see a letter followed by just the number 7, this means that it's a dominant 7 chord. What is a dominant 7 chord? Let me tell you. So in order to create an arpeggio of a dominant 7 chord, we just take a simple major triad. So let's do it from the A since it's the chord that we see here the most. So we have just a triad starting from A. And we're adding the flat 7, meaning this is the note that is not a half step underneath the octave, but a whole step underneath the octave. Okay, so what we have is... So this is the shape of the dominant 7, and because all of our chords are dominant, we take it all over the place. So we have A7, we have D7, going back to A7, and the one other chord that we'll see on the third line is the E7. That's it. We're going to use those 3 chords. We're going to use the dominant, so we're not just sticking to the root note, and we're still going to use those chromatic approaches. So now in the intermediate bass lines, what we feature is what we already talked about, the swing eighth notes, the chromatic approaches, and we're adding the dominant to make it a little bit more interesting than just playing the root notes. So let's see how that goes. All right, well, this was our intermediate blues bass line. If you made it thus far and you can still play it, great job. But we're coming into the hot water to the advanced level. This is going to be a little bit more complicated. Now, here's the thing about the advanced level. We're actually using the same things. We're using the swing eighth notes, we're using chromatic approaches, and we're using the dominant shapes. These are the main things that we're using. What I've added in the advanced bass line is actually just more like complexity of the bass lines, but using the same exact elements, right? So we're still using the dominant chords, but we're using a little bit more. So now the only thing I actually added is instead of just playing those eighth notes, the swing eighth notes, I'm also adding straight up triplets, right? So if so far we had 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4, now sometimes in this bass line you're actually going to play 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Now you're not going to really just play it like this, but it's going to be more in like an arpeggiated way. So for example, the hardest part in this bass line is when I go. This is really just triplets that are mostly based on those dominant shapes, right? So what we have is just going to the 9. And mostly what I used here is going from the octave through that dominant 7. It's pretty easy to understand. It's a little bit harder to actually execute since it's faster and there's more notes coming in there, right? Except for that, you're going to see a lot of other chromatic approaches coming from below, coming from above. There's a little bit of an articulation that I've added in that last line just to make it slightly tastier, which is, you'll see it on the third line. We have, right? So that little, it's actually a chromatic approach within that 7th chord. A little bit of a hammer on. Same thing. That's it, kind of using those triplets again. And then my favorite part, which is kind of mixing those eighth notes and triplets together in the end, which goes into. going into that chromatic approach. All the classic stuff always works, right? So here is my advanced bass line for 12-bar blues. Let's see you do it. That's it. These were my 3 ways of playing a blues bass line over a 12-bar blues in A. Hope this helped you kind of understand the musical elements behind it and hopefully maybe improvise your own blues bass line on your next jam. If you want the music sheet and the backing track and all the tracks with the bass, you know where to find it. You can see it in my Patreon right here. As I mentioned before, for a very limited time, this is going to be available for free. The beginner and intermediate music sheets are going to be available for free, and so you can download them and play them to the backing track. That's going to be right here after this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope this helped you. Let me know what you think about it right here in the comments as usual, and please consider to subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss any other video, and I'll see you very soon.